Out of Heroes Hearth, this is Kyle Fergusson. I'm sitting down for a replay review with none other than Simplicity's Lutano on Junkrat from the Grand Finals versus Storm Esports. Congratulations, Lutano. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you.
This is a map pick. This is so many other things and just a cool character that I'd love to learn someday, so I'm really anxious to get your thoughts on it. But we went through a draft, and in that 2-3 first pick for your team, you guys grabbed up the Junkrat. So I'm figuring map business is happening here.
Yeah, Junk is incredibly strong on Alterac, but it's actually mainly, I believe they first picked Stukov, which means that's a cleanseless healer, and Junkrat in his full trap build is extremely effective against that hero.
More so because of the cleanse and less so that, you know, he stands still for a time and you might be able to mess with him?
Yeah, so if the enemy team ever wants to engage on us, they have to walk through our big traps, which you'll see me pick this game. And those big traps are extremely oppressive around control points in the objective and boss points in this game, so, or in this map, so you'll see that a lot.
So if there wasn't a Stukov, how would the draft have gone, and would you have still gone for the Junkrat?
It's pretty likely, yeah. We're just very effective playing around Junkrat as a hero. His traps are extremely effective, but his Q build is also extremely effective. If the enemy team has a cleanse and they can dive effectively, you can just go Q build and just pump damage.
And that would be your frag launcher here. And for that one, would you still go with the extra wound timers?
Yeah, extra wound timers are really powerful talent because it not only does it give you more damage in fights, but it also gives you better camping because that fourth grenade does more damage on the on the camps, unlike any of the other talents on that tier. So it's a very effective talent.
The final grenade launches from frag launcher deals an additional 120% bonus damage, and the grenade lasts 2 additional seconds before automatically detonating. Do you ever take part in that second as some sort of, like, I don't know, award or a reason to knock somebody off a mount?
It's not awful, but it's mainly that primary one.
Okay. And here you're almost doing like a double soak, but you're also like best buddies with Hanzo, I guess. Malthio's busy doing other things. He's kind of hunting around, ended up bottom. So is this like a rotation we would see out of Junkrat, or is it more just, I got a clear lane, someone's got to do it, I'll go get it?
Yeah, so Junkrat's one of the most effective double soakers in the game, and he's also one of the best campers, which is why his prio and competitive is so high. He does camps extremely fast, and he soaks lanes extremely fast, and he does it safely, which is extremely important.
Okay, so looking at this next lane, are you doing anything in particular? Like Leoric has a very exact way that he clears a lane and who he targets first.
Okay, so when you're playing Junkrat, you want to send 2 to 3 autos and 2 to 3 Qs on the melees, because those are very tanky minions, and then those last 2 Qs and maybe 1 auto, I believe, will insta clear the back range minions. So you just want to split those 4 nades as effectively as possible between the creep wave's HP, and that'll clear the wave extremely quickly.
There doesn't seem to be anything on his kit that goes into just how awesome his auto attack is.
Yeah, his auto is just insanely powerful. They post Junkrat rework, when they made his autos AoE, it just made the character so much more powerful, and it gives him a lot of effective harass when your auto range is actually a little bit longer than is indicated because of that extra little circle of AoE. So if you're autoing the wave, you're also hitting the enemy hero a lot of times, and that's very powerful.
Oh yeah, look at that, and there we kind of see that clear that causes you to be done, be able to get out of here. And as the game goes on, you can move yourself around the map in different ways. However, you don't do the more popular trap or ripped air later, and we go with that full trap build. So tell me about this as it comes together. We got Chattering Teeth, which we've all experienced across the game, slowly chasing us. And then you stack on top of it the Big Az.
Yeah, the Big Az is just incredibly effective. It makes your zone control around objectives so powerful. But really, it's mainly that 13 double trap talent that really brings the build together. You just have a trap up at all times, and you can just replenish them constantly. And once you actually get set up around the objective, you can keep moving that line of traps up and just inching and choking the enemy team out about where they can position.
Reduce steel traps cooldown by 5 seconds and increase the max number of active traps to 2. I can see that being a big deal, but why big ass? Isn't the sticky wicket? I mean, that's the silence.
The sticky wicket is definitely very effective, but it can get pulled by the enemy team's objective creeps.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
The lads around there. So that's the only reason on this map I think I'd go big as instead of sticky wicket.
Yeah, so there's no, and you say pull here as in people would have to drag them on top and over the minions because it won't sort of chase them with your chatter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the armor reduction really not a big deal at all, nor the actual radius increase.
Well, the armor reduction is definitely a big deal. 15 armor in competitive is a massive amount. It lets us just one-shot people, and especially if they're unstoppable, it makes your traps effective where the sticky wicket would not be. Because the sticky wicket obviously doesn't silence, but the 15 armor reduction does go through, even if they hit it while they're unstoppable.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. So
as an example, a lot of times in this game, you'll see Hogger spinning around, and he's actually taking traps and just having 15 armor reduction while spinning.
How much damage are these traps? That doesn't seem like nothing. 193 at the moment.
Yeah, they're not nothing, and not nothing is really important.
You're kind of playing this like backline, almost buddy cop version with Hanzo here. Is it not a little scary looking at things like Hogger and Muradin that can dive you? How are you adjusting your play with such a divey team in an ideal situation for them?
It's definitely very terrifying, but we have macro advantage on them. We have the better offlaners in Malthael and Brightwing, and we have Junkrat that can constantly double soak. So it's not as scary if it's going to be a 4v5 every time we play around objective. So if this was a straight 5v5, we'd definitely be horrified of the Muradin and the Hogger coming in on us. But when it's a 4v5, they just have so much little damage, or such less than threat, you know?
That was such a cool moment. We were actually in your comms during the casted version of that game, and we got to see the call of the arrow coming in to hit, and I believe it was you be like, oh, okay, this works. Let's do it.
Yeah, we hear Osti call big arrow, and I'm like, but where is it? And then 3 seconds later, it just lands and kills them all. Like, oh my god, that was so insane.
Now, you contributed with a certain thing called Riptire, which is just a lot of damage.
Yeah, it's so powerful, especially with Hanzo Arrow into Riptire. That was the main combo we were looking for in these fights, because those two bursts together will pretty much 100-0 most characters on the enemy team.
So create a motorized bomb with health. So if I were to fight Junkrat, how reliably should I be able to get rid of the tire? Or should we all run for the hills?
It depends on the character, really. Like, if you're playing Hanzo, an auto QW, or an auto Q auto will actually 100-0 the tire. If you're playing like a Jaina, a Q into Cone will generally 100-0 the tire. Any character with really good burst can kill the tire really effectively, and you should always look to do that if you have the opportunity.
Okay, that's interesting that you say the Q spells there, because sometimes we have weird things like Zagara tumors that don't get hit by skill shots. So tire functions as a full summon like Asmodan puts out.
Absolutely, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, huge arrow.
But here you guys kind of show some interesting choices, though you just don't care about bosses. Is that prio you were talking about?
Yeah. So because we have macro advantage, we don't really care too much about these bosses. And we also know that we outscale these guys. Hanzo 16 and Junkrat 16 are just insanely powerful. So a lot of these fights we're calling, we don't care about boss. Let's just play for kills.
It gave you guys a lot of focus in the moment, and I think it added to that confidence we were seeing in the audience throughout this match.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten that 13, and I wanted to ask you, are you setting up traps in kind of like an improvised way where you're thinking about, this is how I've seen them play over the course of the game? Is it a research way as, oh, I looked at the replays, Storm always likes to walk here and loves this bush? Or do you just over time gather up accrued Junkrat knowledge of your favorite trap positions?
It's a lot of accrued knowledge, but it also depends on what you're playing against. So if you're playing against a composition that wants to dive you, you're gonna want to set your traps up behind you or in chokes, which stops their dive from being completely effective. If you're playing against a competition that wants to front to back, you just want to start slowly inching your traps up and taking more and more of the area that they can play.
That was a really good example there of just a very simple choice and something that would be highly replicatable. Like, you put down a trap where your team would be running away through, and then it got a hold of Sylvanas and you got her down.
Exactly.
As we start to enter the late game, you said that you guys kind of had the late game heroes. They're definitely seeming a little overwhelmed by some of your push, certainly looking at things like the building advantage without any sort of heavy pushing going on. How are you changing your play? Is there any skills or talents on the enemy side that you're saying, now I have to play differently?
Well, actually, we were really surprised by Hogger's level 10 talent here. We really thought he was going to go Hortipult and dive in with the Murden, but he went Shockwave instead, which means they're way more front-to-back focused instead of dive heavy. So we said after that was picked that we can just kind of play smart, play steady, play around traps, and we should be fine, because they obviously don't have that Hortipult unstoppable engage anymore.
For this sort of around the objective positioning, you had one between the two houses. Would it not be kind of more of a forward position, or again, you're concerned about just popping it in a range that you can't interact with?
Yeah, we don't want them pulling them out of the positions that we want.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
So if they're farther back, it gives them less opportunity to drag them into a position where they're not effective.
Right, so too far forward, they then get to see them, slowly reposition them to where they want, and you lose that advantage and that choice they have to make later on.
Precisely.
That makes perfect sense. You guys got this boss pretty handily. There's quite a bit going on the map right now. Hogger's down in the bottom. What are you looking for, or what is the team looking for in this sort of moment?
So on this push, you'll notice me actually do what I was talking about, of inching these traps up piece by piece. You see that little line? I just had the one in the back destroyed. And we're just trying to slowly inch those up and siege a bit here.
Without the more kind of classic, as we've known it for a very long time, Ripper Air talent, are you still using your W in aggressive ways, or is this like reserved for emergency situations now?
So I actually don't go Ripper Air a large majority of the time, because I think Junkrat's range, you don't really need the Ripper Air, and the Gotta Trap 'em all is so effective in controlling the zone. So you can just play in their face with your traps around you, and you don't have to run too much as long as you're positioning properly.
Interesting positioning battle breaking out here. Seems like they were able to kind of get out, but man, Malthiel just keeps on living, and you guys make a re-engage here. Trap goes right on top of Sylvanas too, and you're all ready to start loading stuff to where she's going to be.
Yeah. That the cocoon trap combo is very effective, especially in the mid game. If they were ever split, we would look for that cocoon trap combo, and they wouldn't be able to escape because it's just a free follow-up, right?
Tell me about endless nades.
It's just a busted talent, man.
Okay,
it's so
all
powerful. Right. Endless nades with 20 cannonball. It's just infinite poke, and it's so hard for the enemy to deal with.
So we've got a burst fire that reduces cooldown and a spread volley, and just in comparison, no contest.
Yeah, I mean, spread volley can be good if you're looking for a bit more macro. You can pop it on maps like Cursed or Sky Temple to insta-clear night camps, or insta-do night camps for yourself, because it's so much burst on objectives. But endless nades and team fights, it's overwhelming the amount of damage it puts out.
And you were saying that on Alterac Pass here, Junkrat could just get through this camp no problem, but you have friends because, well, you've got friends, but also like they will help you do it faster rather than...
Exactly.
Awesome.
Hanzo went to W build, so his camp and his boss is very threatening.
Everyone's on comms, might as well be there, and there's nothing else of interest happening on the map right now except for this boss firing up.
Oh,
nice.
Maska inted a little bit here, but Hosty makes up with a huge arrow to trade. Just a tremendous play from Hosty in this series, honestly. He played extremely well.
And at this point, as you start to mop up the team, the tires can be used pretty freely to just get that single pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus we just set up traps on the boss objective here. We play for kills again. I don't even know if we get this boss. I think we lose it, but We win the fight afterwards, just barely, I believe.
Well, I think that really shows in just, unlike the Storm League situation that would bust out where Hanzo and Junkrat both run onto the pad, it shows your knowledge of the lack of need for such things, thanks to your macro control.
Absolutely. And you notice during all that, we got their mid keep because we just had a camp pushing through our macro pressure.
Does trap give sight, or is it only the bomb itself?
It gives a very large AoE radius.
Is that increased by Big As in the chatter?
I don't believe so. I think it's still the same, whether you have big ass or a sticky whip it.
We got to 20. There are some very cool 20s for Junkrat here, but you went with that cannonball.
Yeah, cannonball with endless nades. It's just so hard to miss your grenades with the cannonball. I'm kind of bad at the game, you know, so I need that extra AoE from cannonball to really make the endless nades effective.
So the combo here being that when you hit, you reduce cooldown. Now that they're easier to hit, you're reducing cooldown, therefore more nades.
Exactly.
Cool, and then we see the bomb go on the boss, so you can watch that later. That seems really powerful, regardless of map, the ability to give that much vision around.
Yeah, it's very effective. You just throw that W there and you just forget about it, and you just always know when they're doing the boss. Here, especially effective on maps like this in Kurstala.
Oh, because of the boss.
Exactly.
Here, we don't know where they are, but they're not 20. Any considerations in the team, or just burn, and we'll win if they show up?
Yeah, we're just calling full burn because we know they have to soak for 20s, and they get 20s, but they have to force the 4v5 on boss because this boss will actually end the game. And we just kind of win the fight from there. Notice how the Hogger is just now getting to the fight after the Murden is already dead and we've capped the boss.
And holding on to Tire here because it's not hitting multiple people, or maybe better as a finisher?
It's just for positioning, really. With Cannonball and Endless, I can constantly push forward, but if I'm using Riptire, I'm going to be in the base by the time I get the Riptire off, because they're in full retreat mode.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Generally using Riptire, right here as an example, is when we've already sieged up and we can just kill them, or they into stop the cap, you know? It's more effective in that scenario.
Well, here we get to see that was actually a silence from Stukov too that caused you to lose the tire, therefore putting him in that position. He went for a quick push, causing him to just stand there and get cleaned up.
Exactly.
So it seems like Junkrat takes a lot of work to learn.
Yeah, he takes a minute for sure, but as long as you're keeping your brain active, always thinking about where you should put your traps, and thinking about what their win condition is in fights, you should be able to play smart and get the dub.
Oh my goodness, the siege is kind of outrageous. I feel bad for Nazebo. His one chance to exist in the game is taken up by Junkrat. Is there a different build you would recommend for anyone like just getting into Junkrat or wants to do that little bit of limit testing?
I'd say this build is the most beginner friendly. If you want to go for a more team fight oriented build, you could go the extra wound timers with the stacking Q at 4, and you can take pretty much anything you want at 7, and then at 13 you can go taste for explosions, or sorry, not taste for explosions, bombs away for a little bit more damage on those Qs, and you can weave in autos and Qs for a big burst. And then you just go 16 endless with 20 cannonball and just do insane amounts of damage after you get that Q scaling done at 4.
Which would basically be just firing at anything that moves as much as you can.
Just an absolute artillery machine.
Very cool. Thank you for the rundown on this very particular Junkrat map. We didn't see it much here because, well, things were being managed quite well, but Junkrat does a lot of poke for those objective types, as well as all the site we talked about, like Curse Hollow there. So check him out if you're in the market for a new healer. Thank you for joining me, everyone. There's going to be more CCL action coming up in the future. Stay tuned to this channel, like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course there'll be more Learn to Play content for Heroes of the Storm.